Okay, so thank you, Tom, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Wanted to speak to you for a while, Tom. Let's get these up. I don't know if we'll get through everything, and if you're keen to do another one, possibly if we don't get through all the questions, because some of the people in my community have given me a few questions they want to ask you, but you can talk about your platform, and actually, because I know a lot of the information they're asking, you've already put out there in the Heal Me. So most people know who Tom is, who's going to be watching this, who are connected with me. And Tom's covers a broad spectrum of research. And after moving to the Northern Rivers, I personally have seen what Tom's done. And he does a lot for the community, so I appreciate everything you do, Tom. Yes. So I want to just get to know you a little bit more, to be honest with you, Tom. I know there's a lot of you've got out there. How did you get to cover such a broad spectrum of research? You cover health, you cover law. How did that come about?
Basically, because of what life threw at me. You know, I never resigned myself to be in like a certain label of any kind. Like, you know, most people will go through school and college, or they'll get a trade and they're like, I'm a chippy, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a something. And something about that just didn't feel right to me to be pigeonholed or pinned down when I was young. And I've stayed away from trying to fit a mold, really. Firstly, because I don't want to be molded in that way. But second, because I don't put money and social status or my parents think of me ahead of what I like. I want to make sure I'm pleased before other people are pleased, so to speak. And so it wouldn't have pleased me to just pick one kind of avenue and then just, let everything fall around that. I really was willing to become uncomfortable and also to not have security in the way that a lot of people associate security before I could kind of find myself, so to speak. Not that I think that I have yet, but I just feel that I've learned a number of different things because I've chased an experience first and foremost over, say, cash or over what somebody thinks of me.
So where does that come from? Has that just always been in you? Did you never get taught any of this?
Well, I think a bit of everything. I mean, I haven't really thought about it too much as far as where it comes from, but I think a lot of this, whether we know it or not, even the stuff we think that our strengths or the good parts about us come from our traumas. So for sure, I think the way that I developed in my formative years would have had a big impact. If you want to talk about the nature aspect, from an astrological point of view, I'm a Leo with a bunch of suns somewhere and whatever. And I'm a generator in a human design thing, and in a gene keys aspect, I actually can't remember, but it's in the makeup of somebody who likes to go their own way, who doesn't like to just kind of follow a set path, and who likes to who is willing to create for themselves and not wait for somebody else to do it for them. So, you know, I think it's a nature nurture blend. So there's a lot of aspects to it, I think, for that.
Yeah, good man. I've heard you mention before that you got sick. Did you study health before that, or did your sickness push you in that direction? And how sick were you?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. No one's asked that before. So it was both. It was getting an interest in health is partly what drove me to become sick, which I see a lot of people do. They take on health fads and there was nothing wrong with them, and now they're not well. But also it was a vested interest in getting myself sick. And then how sick was I? Well, I was really not functioning at all. So I was unable to really, I could care for myself, as in I could wash myself and stuff, but couldn't support myself. And I was very lost for quite a while, for a number of years, for those that don't know, it was essentially broadly labeled chronic fatigue syndrome, had fibromyalgia, so a lot of pain in the body, inability to really think, inability to, walk more than a couple of 100 meters at a time. So yeah, not really fun. Pardon? It started around 22. It got into full swing around 23 and then went through to 35, 36 until I was really coming out of it.
Do you know now what caused that?
Yep, for sure. It's always the same. When I see somebody who has chronic long-term illness, it's always, for me, two major things. One, an underlying emotional trauma that's running a pattern and is not allowing the body, or driving the body, the physicality to do something. And two, almost always there's an excess of toxicity. And for me, it was mostly the heavy metals, mercury playing a big role. I had 12, so I don't want to lie, it was a minimum of 8. I can't remember if it was 8, 10, 12, whatever, but 8 amalgam fillings, so your mercury amalgams in my mouth before I was a teenager. So a high exposure to mercury coupled with that was put in my body through vaccines. And I did have vaccine reactions when I was younger. So that all, compounds, because if it's not coming out of the body, it's storing in the brain. So there was a definite mercury catalyst, but there's still that underlying emotional element. And it's actually what drives people to extremes. So one of the reasons that I got good at, I was a elite level athlete coming into the years that I got sick. Also, I excelled at academics through school. There's a few things that I've done really well at, but it's that extremism, or the drive to extremism, which actually comes from those traumas, that emotional imbalance that allows you to do those things. It's not required. There are people that excel in lots of things without being extreme, but that kind of extreme mindset got me ill for sure. Like the way I was approaching diet, the way I would avoid fat because I thought it was bad for you and all that sort of stuff, all of those sorts of things. They weren't the determining factor, but they were contributing factors.
So you don't have to answer these questions, but how did you find the trauma? What was your technique to find the trauma that was behind you getting sick?
Well, at first they're shadows. Like I didn't think I had any. I thought I had a great childhood. And up until I really started exploring what the psyche and the emotional bodies are made of, I thought I was totally fine. I didn't know. It was seeing somebody else about my physical health issues that they brought up these things like, I think you've got a real shadow of anger, or I think you've got this. And I'm like, what's a shadow? So it was through dealing with other people that helped teach me that. And also then as you get to know it, you see it reflected back because I see that anger in me. I see this in me. I see the resentment. And so techniques or whatever, not really any, just becoming aware that I wasn't as great as I thought I was, or not great, but I wasn't, I wasn't without these foibles that I would see in others, I'll say, that I have my weaknesses. It was first of all, just recognizing and admitting that I had them. And then through that, the same things that got me really sick were the same elements of me that would allow me to get really well, which was being willing to look at it, not shying away from, doing the extra mile of running or getting up that extra hour earlier or doing 10 extra push-ups or abstaining from certain foods so it would help my athleticism. Those same traits actually allow you to go, all right, well, maybe I'm not perfect and I've got to look at these, and it allows you to actually not shy away from the things that may be uncomfortable, like extreme heat, ice baths, extreme runs and all that sort of stuff. It allows you to kind of, push into the emotional realm as well as just the physical realm. So that helped me, I feel.
What was your sport? What were you an elite athlete at?
So I had, when I was a junior, I played tennis and I had a national ranking for singles and doubles until I was about 13. Just kind of went off the rails and all that. And then got really sick because I thought it was funny through A, low self-esteem, B, just anger at the system and teachers and parents and all that sort of stuff. Just thought it'd be funny to see how fat I could get. So I was one of those kids at school that I would steal, happy to admit that I did it, not proud that I did it, but would steal Coke and chocolate bars and that from Coles or the shops before going to school because, hey, you're cool if you do that. And it was a challenge. And I would chug 3 liters of Coca-Cola. Like I'd literally let other kids watch it. And then I would eat whatever I could get off other people. The worse the food, the better. And just, really just throwing just not caring at all about myself, very apathetic and everything. So then that led to me getting actually quite a lot of pain in my gut. I had a lot of internal pain from that. So by the time I got to 15, I weighed 85 kilos as a 15, 81, I think it was, which I held the weight pretty well. You know, I was kind of stocky anyway, but now I'm like 72 as just a base weight without training. So it gives you an idea of that extra 10 plus kilos of weight as a 15-year-old, not even fully grown. So then it was out of that, just realizing that I was doing the wrong thing. My body was meeting the pain teacher, and the pain teacher was teaching me I was really out of balance and I really had to do something about it. So I got into kickboxing and boxing. And from there, it led me to, Muay Thai, and then actually got into karate. And then in karate, I found you could actually compete and make money and do that sort of stuff. So it was martial arts, and it was also triathlon. And I also got involved in weightlifting. And then I thought I could do it all. And even though people told me I couldn't, I thought I knew better as a, 20-year-old male. Can't really tell them what to do, especially one like me. So yeah, I ended up burning out really badly from doing too much, and going from doing well at one thing and then trying to do everything well, and then just performance just decreased, and then pushed harder to try to bring the performance up. But yeah, it didn't go very well.
So do you think when you were trying to put on weight, that was an attention thing as well?
Yeah, to be honest, absolutely. It was a way to have a differentiation, it was cool. It was funny. It's like, whoa, look at that dude. He's so extreme, he must be so tough or cool or whatever if he's willing to do that, or laugh at it or whatever. He thinks it's funny. All of it, as I say, was born of very low self-worth and value. And that was how I would get value. I would do extreme things. If somebody dared me to eat something or jump off that roof or, yell at that teacher for no reason, I'd do it. It's
And just while we're on that subject of what you just shared, what is so dangerous about mercury fillings, and what is actually happening in the body now that you know when you are eating a diet like that and drinking a lot of Coke and things like that? And did you notice an immediate difference in your health once you got your fillings removed?
All right, so these are all on different timelines. My fillings they started coming out at 25. They didn't finish till 35. The diet changed around age 18. Around age 18, it really started to shift into something. 18 to 21 really got refined. So first of all, actually, I'll handle the amalgam second because that's a different timeline. So the diet, I noticed big changes quickly with diet, partly because around 18 years of age, your body is going to express a lot quicker your genetic potential and any changes in diet and lifestyle. So the potential was there to express quicker, and that's what I experienced. Pain went away immediately as soon as I went from cutting out your gluten, sugars, all the processed stuff. I actually found at the time I was cutting out fat, actually. That was where I was going really wrong, really badly. And then I came across a program that at the time, I don't know if you remember, back to like 1999, 2000, wasn't the internet time, but I'd read in the back of a Blitz magazine, and Blitz was a popular martial arts magazine at the time. There was an ad for a thing called the Spartan Health Regime. And this was typical of the time. You would get an advertorial where it'd sound like the best thing ever, like beat any man with one technique that no one will ever teach you, that kind of crap that like no one will fall. Well, people still fall for it, but bigger than.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Kind of like Rex Kwon Do from Napoleon Dynamite, the wisdom of a man. But I found the Spartan Health Regime, and it was by this guy called Anthony Bova, and it just said all this stuff like you'll blowtorch off body fat, and you'll be like this much healthier and this much better. But something resonated with me, and I bought it. It was $100, I think it was, and waited for it in the mail as you did, and then read through it, and it was very enlightening for me because it showed me where native or indigenous tribes, the way they did stuff, and then what Westerners do. And it completely flipped for me the idea of fat being bad. And what was really bad, which is preservatives, processed food, processed meats, like all that sort of stuff, pasteurized dairy. It it was a bit of it. I don't feel it was the healthiest thing, but it was a step. It was a big shift for me to realize what natural foods were really all about and what the real harm was in foods and in the processed industry of foods. So that was big for me. I went a little extreme with it and things, and it didn't lead to good things. But by and large, you know, it was like a majority fruit kind of a diet. I was eating heaps of fruit and then heaps of just stuff coming from the standard fruit and veg store, all wrapped in plastic, sprayed with God knows what, you know, chemicals coming in, even though I thought I was going, you know, quote unquote natural. And so, yeah, lots of lessons to learn along the way, but away went my bowel pain and all that sort of stuff. I didn't get all the gut pain and that I was getting. Health improved a lot. Performance was good. So as it will be as a 21-year-old, you know, you feed yourself moderately well, and as a 21-year-old, you'll perform well. So then the fillings, though, why is it bad? Well, an amalgam just means like if you amalgamate two companies, you put them into one. So an amalgam is like a combination of different metals, which includes mercury. Some include silver, for example. You get different kinds of amalgams. But what they do is they use a very toxic version of mercury. There's different types of mercury. This is a highly toxic version that binds with other metals, which then they put in your teeth. Teeth are a living thing. And when you've got mercury in your mouth, it's actually releasing very, very tiny amounts of mercury into your system 24 hours a day. Why that's bad is that mercury is, I think, if not the most, it's in the top 0.01% of toxic materials known to man. I think it's actually the most toxic. And so even a trace nanoparticle amount of it is no good for the body. And if that's all it's releasing into your system 24/7, that's still really bad for you. The reason you may not notice it straight away is that it's so toxic and harmful for the body. And the body is so good at being able to survive that what it does is it shuttles it away into the deeper recesses of the body, wherever the fattiest tissue deposits are. That's good because it protects your connective tissue, your vascular tissue, your respiratory system. It protects that, but it puts it to glands and organs because that's the fattiest deposits. And the fattiest deposit is the brain. So over time, you start to notice things like impaired neural function, which causes everything from Alzheimer's to dementia to autism to chronic fatigue to fertility issues. Everything will be down-regulated once your brain starts filling with mercury. So did I notice anything when they came out? No, not really, actually, because by that time I was already heavily loaded. And what can happen is that you get an additional exposure as the amalgams come out. So it's certainly better, Nick, to have them out, but you're likely to get some exposure as they do come out, which you need to handle with chelation, whether that's through foods or supplements or specific chelators or some other way of getting it out of the body.
And then when you use the chelators, do you use other things to actually help carry them out, like zeolites and things like that? Do you use them?
Yeah, zeolites I find are more expensive than they're not as great. I find just clay, standard like bentonite clay is better. And then you've got things like cilantro, which is your coriander, and especially the oil of it's more potent. There's various other products by different companies. Activation products, I've done a lot of research and work with. They've got a product called Solaris, and that's really good at removing heavy metals. Then you've got chelators like DMSA, alpha lipoic acid, DMPS. They're all agents that bind to mercury and help remove from the body, but they have a half-life, which means that they can redistribute. So anything that binds to mercury, if it doesn't have like an infinite half-life, it means it can let it go somewhere else in the body if it's not excreted before it lets go of the mercury molecule that it's bound to. So that's why most mercury protocols or heavy metal protocols require constant dosages so that it's sweeping through anything that's left behind as you're chelating. Foods do it too. Your standard, basically a standard healthy organic diet with good quality raw fats, good mix of fruits and vegetables, and coconut products are particularly good. And anything with mold on it, moldy bread, molded berries, moldy fruits, all that sort of stuff will also help to break down toxic metallic minerals, which are also known as heavy metals.
Which is literally the opposite of what we've been told again.
Yeah.
Molds are bad and whatever.
Yeah.
So would you suggest, just let's say someone's watching this and they've got a mouthful of mercury fillings, would you suggest getting them out over a period of time rather than just getting them all out at once? And would you recommend doing a heavy metal protocol after getting them out?
Yep. So if you've got a lot, I don't know any dentists that would really take them all out of one go. They would say you should space it out. Sometimes I'd say they make more money, but it is actually for safety as well. But look, in all honesty, Nick, if somebody doesn't have overt symptoms, I'd actually say leave them in. And the reason is that while it's no good for you, getting them out can cause its own issues. And I know people that have gotten acute mercury toxicity because they've had them taken out. So it's kind of like you've got to weigh up, like anything in life, pick your battles, right? So it's if you don't have anything wrong with you, honestly, I just kind of like do what you're doing until there's a reason to do anything more extreme. However, if you have a lot and you know it's affecting you, or you're just becoming aware of this and you're like, to hell with that, I don't want that in my body anymore, I'm getting it out. There's nothing wrong with that decision either. I would get them spaced out. And yes, I would be chelating as I go, but when I say chelating, I mean detoxifying. The general rule is you don't chelate for mercury while there's anything in your mouth because it will draw it. You'll actually absorb more of it, like it will pull it out of your teeth. So the general rule is don't do specific chelation until all of it's out of the body. But general heavy metal cleansing, like your bentonite clay or coriander or something like that.
Well. Activated charcoal, okay?
Sorry, I missed that.
Activated charcoal.
Activated charcoal. Sorry, yeah, that's good. Yep, for sure.
So, because we haven't got much time, in all your time as a health practitioner, can you sum up health simply? One sentence.
Yeah, balance. Yeah, because for me, there's the four primary bodies. There's more, there's etheric, subtle, astral bodies, whatever, but you've got a physical body, an emotional body, a mental body, or the body of the mind, and then your spiritual body. If there's imbalance in any of those, it will also show up throughout that chain. So that's why you could have a perfect diet. I eat all organic. It's all fresh. It's all clean, mostly raw, balanced and everything, but I keep getting tumors. Why? Well, you probably got some massive trauma going on in the emotional body that's working its way through the chain of bodies to manifest or show up in the physical body, because you can't see, well, most people can't, some people can, the emotional body and where its things are. So it'll show up in the physical body. So when I say balance, I just mean balance across all things. And the more spiritually, mentally, and emotionally balanced you are, the more balanced your physicality will be as well. Your physical expression into the world will be far more balanced. So that's my one-word summary of health.
Do you believe you can bring traumas in from past lives? Do you believe in reincarnation?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But just because I don't see that time as a linear construct in that regard, I see it going forward and back and everything. So, and around and around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So another thing I wanted to touch on was you were homeless. How long were you homeless for? How did that come about? Was it intentional? And what did you learn from that experience?
Well, like combined probably 3 years, but it was spread out over a number of different years. So as a teenager, I would go away from home for periods of a time, but I'd just be staying at mates' houses. So I wasn't homeless. The first time I was genuinely homeless was around 6 months into the chronic fatigue. I just wasn't working, wasn't able to do stuff. And then I was like, I'll just go live back home with my parents. My parents were a lot of the source of my early traumas, not knowing anything about them at that time, not understanding them and their traumas, not understanding myself. That was a really bad thing, because they just thought I was pretending. They thought I was making it up. They thought all I had to do was go and see a doctor because they buy into the medicine realm of things. And so there was no understanding there, So I was really, I chose, being very strong-minded. I said to myself, I would rather be on the street than live under that roof with them, with their lack of understanding of me or their belief systems or whatever. So it was never that I never had a home. And I also believe that in a lot of people that I've seen personally who've been homeless, there's a victim mentality that goes along with it. It's not because they can't live under a roof somewhere. It's an inability to compromise on their beliefs or to yield or soften to an experience. I'm not blanketing every homeless person with that, but I'm going to say a lot because I've met a lot in my time. So that was the first time, was maybe around, I think I spent 3 months homeless. And then I lived with some mates for a while, and then I was homeless again for about 6 months. And then, yeah, so they were homeless times.
I was just going to say, are we talking actually living on the street, or
yeah.
camping? What was the situation?
Yeah, so they were homeless times. Okay, because I didn't have a car. I didn't have I just had like a pack that I kept with me, which just had a couple of changes of clothes. Yeah. And I would find ways to, part of it, I think, was like almost like a test. I kind of like honestly wanted to be homeless. It was part of my hard luck story. It was a challenge for me. I wanted to know that I could survive. I wanted to push myself. Same reasons that I would run 20 extra sprints when everyone else had finished. You know, that kind of mentality. I firmly believe that we all create our own circumstances. I don't think that it was like, oh, life just gave me lemons and I was on the streets. I made it. You know, I created it. I wanted it. So even if it was unconscious, I wanted it, you know. So, but it was good because I learned the safe places to be at night. I found out a lot of the times as a homeless man, you'll get more sleep done during the day because nighttime's actually kind of hard to sleep sometimes. It's too cold, it's unsafe, it's uncomfortable. That's why you see a lot of homeless people, you know, you'll see them in the streets and that, they're sleeping at like 11 in the morning. That's why, you know. But then, yeah, and then I found ways to, like, I would dumpster dive and I'd find like an old rug or a roll of carpet, and then I'd roll myself up in the carpet, sleep on the beach and stuff. And
where were you living?
Gold Coast.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So then this part of it though, Nick's interesting because I wasn't like a destitute person. I still could speak coherently. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't on alcohol. I wasn't, you know what I mean? I was a coherent individual. So in that respect, I didn't face the same adversities as your standard homeless person who doesn't have a lot of things going for them, who couldn't, at any stage, I could have walked into, you know, a shop somewhere after having a shower and just saying, hey, got some work for me? And I would have got a job, you know, like I could have. I wasn't like a genuinely destitute person, you know? So what that meant is that I could roll into one of the resorts, which I did regularly. If I wanted a shower, a sauna, use the toilet, even just sit down at a restaurant where people had been eating as if I was supposed to be there and just finish people's food. So I didn't go without, sometimes I went hungry, but that was also probably by just not wanting to create an opportunity for myself to eat. So it wasn't a bad life being homeless, to be honest. And then other times that I didn't have a home was because I was living in a car. And that was also by choice. I'd sleep in a car and I'd sleep by, anyway, lots of stories with sleeping in cars, but I know a lot of people have done that as well. And then later it was living in tents. And I would do that as I started to find out about council and government and laws and rules and what you can and can't do. And I wanted to go and live outside of society and do it my own way on land that you're not supposed to be on. And I would live on top of mountaintops and be the king of the mountain and live in tents and stuff like that. So I did that on the Gold Coast. And when I moved down to the Northern Rivers, that's what I did. I was one of those people that lived in Bruns in the Taiga Forest. Not where I didn't know other people lived in there in these like cities that they'd set up. I was on the beach side. I didn't think there was anyone else around. I did that for the first 10 months that I was in the Northern Rivers. I lived in a tent there.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, it's great. They were always the freest times because of a lack of possessions that bind you to stuff, a lack of a certain schedule that binds you to things, and even simple stuff, Nick, like a mirror. Like I didn't even look in a mirror for a long time, and that's really freeing as well because there's an element of whether you think you're thinking good or bad or otherwise, there's judgment whenever you see a reflection. And not having a mirror for a long time was really freeing as well. So but then it has its other, everything's got its, it's yin and it's yang. And for me, what got tiring was not having, I have music in me and I wasn't expressing it through anything. Like it's one thing to be homeless, but try having a guitar, then you're bound by something. And can you leave that in a tent? Is it going to be there when you get back? You know, is it safe? So I didn't have things like instruments. And within, this is funny because I just decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm enjoying this, but I feel like I need to get into a house purely for the purposes of having an instrument, right? And within a week, this guy who I'd done a lot of minimum wage laboring for, like as in too little wages and that, he's a real estate guy, and he just sent me a text going, do you know anyone that wants a cheap house? And I was like, I was literally just been thinking about it. And it turned out that there was this place available for well under market value for a rental. And then shortly after moving in, I found an ad on like Marketplace or something for somebody who wanted their piano minded while they went overseas for a year. And I was like, bang, here's a house and a piano. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Why do you think that came at that time? Why did things like that happen? What is synchronicity?
Well, you know, I think part of it is that you've got to have an intention, and you've also got to be open. You've got to have some kind of openness, because that's a great question, actually, because off the back of speaking about being homeless, it's not like there were never offers to be in a home or to have a job or there's always offers. And I feel a lot of the times we get in our own way, and we'll prevent that. We'll prevent synchronicities from happening. And as soon as we just open up and we go, I actually want this, not like I want a Ferrari, I want $1 million, I want like not those kinds of things, but just like a real calling for something. And then if you're open to it and you get out of your own way, then that's, I feel, when synchronicities happen. It's like a combination of a few things. So yeah, it's been, you know, I've had good experiences with it, and I've had experiences of absolutely being in my own way and things just not falling into place as well.
Would you ever go homeless again?
Yeah, for sure. That's why, man, like, not only do I not care about the New World Order, I'm like waiting for stuff to collapse more than it has, because I'm very comfortable. I know that's part of why I think I might have gone through it. It's not just because of my traumas and my, you know, self-worth or whatever. It's because, like, in some way, I think there's some knowing when we come into this realm, the timeline and everything, that we know something's a high possibility or it's going to happen ahead of time. And part of my being wants to know that it's part of my security comes from being willing to be so unsecure that I can be secure in that. So that, like, if I'm, with all my experiences that I've had, if there's no money, I'm like, who cares? If there's no supply chain, don't care. If there's no house that I can call mine every day, I don't care. You know, I'm very, so it's almost like that comfortability will mean that those things won't even present themselves. Anyway, it's usually the people that fear it the most. Like, I could never live without a house and beauty products and money and all that. They're the ones that are probably going to bring that on them at some point, because it might be a lesson that they need to learn of that it's okay to not have that, or sink or swim. You know, you'll figure it out. You have to figure it out, and it could come to them because of that.
A conversation come up a few months ago, or maybe last year, about what would you do if you won the lottery? And, you know, if you won 25 mil, what would you do? And I said, I'd give it to my missus and my son and let them buy whatever house they wanted. Then I'd spend 12 months being homeless.
Yeah.
That's something I want to experience, you know what I mean?
Well, just really quickly on that, if just for anyone listening, if your answer to what would you do if $25 million landed in your lap, if your life would be completely different from what it is now, it's a sign that you're not really on the right track now, because the money won't actually change things that much. And anything that's like not really right, the money will compound that. So if you were said, if you're in a place where you would go, I actually wouldn't change that much. It'd be nice. You know, I'd give myself a bit of a rest just because I haven't given myself a chance to do that for a while, but then I'd be back into exactly what I'm doing now. The life would be just a bit easier, be icing on the cake to have that 25 mil in the bank, mainly because I could use it to help other people as well. If that's your attitude, you know you're on the right track in life. But if you're like, I'd move house, I'd ditch that woman, I'd get a different one, I'd have a different this and a different job and if everything would be different, that's a really good thing to consider for yourself.
And just while we're on that, before I go on to the other questions, what's the relationship between contribution, saving others, and happiness?
Did you say saving others?
Serving,
Serving others, right? Contribution and happiness. I really believe, and this is from my own experience and observing a lot of other people, is that without being of service and value to others, you'll never find happiness for yourself. It definitely comes from, there's, again though, Nick, to me, it's a balance, because I know people that martyr themselves, and it's all about, at least they're convincing themselves, it's all about being a good person and helping others, and they're extremely unhappy. And
but that's not conditional, is it, Tom? There's conditions on their service.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, honestly, and this is okay. So going back to the chronic fatigue thing, or just chronic illness, the first 2 times I heard it, I was like, that's weird that I've heard it twice. And then I started to hear it time after time after time. And what I heard is this: I don't deserve to be sick because I spent 6 months or a year volunteering in India helping kids. And I'm like, and not lying, I've heard that more than 10 times, and not just more than 10 times, specifically volunteering kids, India. That story, more than 10 times for people with chronic illness. And then I've heard the same story extrapolated where it wasn't kids in India, but I did this, I volunteered for that, and I did this, and I'm sick. And I'm like, that's a real story that just because it's not. Yeah, it's a very conditional thing, and it's like I'm a good person because I did that, and I feel it a lot in people. Sometimes in Christians, I'll feel it where I feel them wanting to be good, not because they want to be good, but because they fear the wrath of God. And it's like, I don't want anybody coming at me out of fear and that sort of stuff. If somebody wants to help me, I want it to be because they want out of the goodness of their heart, not out of the fear that's in their heart. Because I mean, you're the same. You'd be able to feel it. Most people can feel that a mile off.
Okay, some big questions, Tom. Who are we, in your opinion? What is this experience all about, life?
It's only my opinion, so yeah, just preface it with that. But I feel that this is made for us. This place is made, it's created, and it's designed specifically for us, and it's made specifically for us to find ourselves, to know who we are. As we know who we are, we get to know what our creator is. And I think that's kind of it. It's almost like the creator trying to figure out to know, the creator is trying to know thyself, and the creator is doing that through us. And everything here, the whole realm, is designed specifically for that purpose, where we have dominion here, and there's stages of finding oneself. But I think that that's the whole reason we're here. It's nothing more than like a training ground. I think there are other realms. My understanding is that there are other realms that energetically we enter into once we've kind of like passed the test, so to speak, here. And only through many times of experiencing these other, and then leveling up, so to speak, do we actually become closer to that creation source. Yeah. Did
you get taught any of this, or is this something you've worked out? And do you have like a spiritual teacher or a daily practice? And have you had any experiences, like supernatural experiences?
Working backwards, yes, I've had several supernatural experiences and visions that have just appeared for me. I've never done psychedelics or I've done it with other people. It hasn't come through sitting or facilitating with other people. It's come through, I think, through my own pain. I think a lot of people do get things through, they get an awakening, or the veil lifts through loss. I think that's one way. It's not the only way. It's one way a lot of people seem to have a veil lifted. I've had many experiences of actually, having a very close connection or dialogue, or seeing God, or what made me, through different ways. It's very profound. In a lot of ways you can't even articulate it, but it's just like something you carry as a feeling. And I think that other people start to see in certain people as well. Like there's something about somebody that you just kind of know that they've experienced something along those lines. And so I've had those experiences. Do I have a practice? Not particularly. I have various practices, but nothing specific as in this gets me closer to God, because I feel that everything does if you embody the experience, even if it's doing something wrong or harmful like that. If it's done with the full embodiment of the experience, I think that's also getting closer to that element. But presence and making something sacred as well. So especially growing up in Western culture in Australia, there's like no sacredness, there's no ceremony, there's no culture, you know, it's all just, yeah, it's not really there. So finding that in things, so surfing and music became that for me. So did sport. I would find elements of myself through sport and through pushing myself, like I mentioned earlier, and then finding things that actually became like a bit of a practice that I developed for myself. So a way that I would pray without being vehemently opposed to religion and God and the Bible and praying, from the way that I came through school to finding my own way to pray. And so little things like that I do for myself, and making sure that I have a reverence each day, a gratitude each day, and just a mindfulness, just that kind of thing. So over time, from doing martial arts and things, you learn about the breath, you learn about stillness, and you learn about meditation, you learn about Zen as a practice, you learn about the Tao, or you learn all these little things you learn on the way, kind of add up to then everything has its part that you glean value from, without going, I'm a Taoist, or I'm a Zen guy, or I'm a meditation guy, or I'm a breathwork guy, or I'm same as like what you asked earlier when we started the conversation, Nick. It's like I never tied myself to one thing, one modality, one discipline, but the discipline is in like being disciplined in general. Like that's the discipline. So that's the best I can describe.
You are disciplined in your daily life.
Yeah, so that's a big part of it for me. That's what got me from being off the rails, was discipline, pulled me back into line. And martial arts was the catalyst for that for me, was having a discipline, having a regimen or a regime. And if nothing else, then just dedicating to something. And so whenever I find the most spiritual, if you want to call it that, people, they never have a feather in an eagle feather. They never like smoke you with sage. They never wear garbs. They never speak in a certain tone of voice or try to hug you a certain way. It's in a dedication to mastery of something, or at least just a dedication. Like they might be a bus driver, but they do that really well. They're dedicated to that task. Or it's through dedicating yourself to mastering an instrument, or some craft of some kind, you know, carpentry. I think that's why the story of Jesus is that he was a carpenter. You know, it's like, it's that element. It's not like how many kumbayas can you do while you're beating a drum, or what, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not that you can't get it through that, but I'm just saying that when I've experienced what I perceive to be real spirituality, which to me is that self-awareness, it's from what you might just call plain everyday people, but they've got a discipline and a dedication to something, even if it's many things, like a jack of all trades, but still that state of being permeates what they do in their life.
It's a presence rather than another ego attachment to something else.
Yeah.
I've heard in one of your videos, you say before you enter the courtroom, for example, you often speak to God and you'll say, give me whatever I need to experience to grow. So what are you talking to there? When you say you talk to God, just run us through how that is in your awareness.
My awareness of that, Nick, is maybe it's just my higher self. I'm not sure, but it's essentially what I'm trying to do is just dissolve the ego. It's the ego that will fear and be bound by an attachment to something happening or not happening. So by going like the opposite, then, if I can just give the opposite, would be this: dear God, please make sure this goes as smoothly as possible. Please make the judge have a heart attack and they don't even hear my story, and I get off scot-free and I get to go home and masturbate in front of you porn or something like that. You know, like that's a typical, how can I get out of my experience and go on medicate myself in some way? Yeah, whether like drink, whatever. So the opposite of that then is saying, if you call it God, it'd be, dear God, please allow me to walk into this experience with an open heart and an open mind, and just absolutely embody, be there with full presence of body, mind, and soul, so that I can have this experience and through that get closer to you. Whatever that is, even if that means that some dude slaps handcuffs on me, throws me in a cell and gives me like a $10,000 fine. Give me that experience and allow me the strength to embody and be present for that experience, because it'll bring me closer to you. That's kind of like the mindset. I'm not saying that's exactly what happens, but those are just to explain the two different ways, like one's the opposite of the other.
One's surrendering by Jesus, not, what do you say, not my will, but thy will be done.
Yep.
So one more question. Where are we? You know, I heard you say the other day around the world, and then you corrected yourself and you said across the plane.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
where are we? What is this place?
Yeah, okay. Well, I have no idea. I just know it's definitely not a spinning ball that's out of control, hurtling through space. I definitely know that. What it is, I have no idea. What I perceive it to be at this time is a flat plane, but I believe it to be infinite, an infinite plane, and one of many. As in, there are planes below us and there are planes above us. Yeah. And this, what we're in here, I believe to be the middle ground. You've heard in many stories the term Middle Earth. I think that that's where we are. Yeah. And I think it's inhabited by some higher beings that are here as maybe teachers or guides or something, or invisible things that help things along the way. I also think we're inhabited by entities of a lower form, which are what you might call evil or bad ones, which to my understanding are the ones that occupy the political positions, the media positions, and all that sort of stuff. And it's this balance. It's like all the movies that we see, I believe, are made by some of these people, whether they're good or bad or whatever, to show us what's really going on as like a way to disclose what this is all about and what their intentions are. So that's what Star Wars is really about, the good, the light and the dark. And it's all this dance that's going on. And I feel that we're here to experience that in its entirety so we can learn about that dance. And as we can learn that dance, we have the ability to either stay here and keep going round and round, or some will actually, devolve if they want to, because it's by choice and agreement, they can go down. And those of us that want to actually become more of ourselves and really know ourselves, we ascend, so to speak, to another realm. And that's my understanding. So it's I don't know if that makes sense to other people.
But it does. You nailed it. I see it similar. And, we have positive, benevolent beings coming down to try and uplift us, and we have negative polarity beings that are coming up to try and pull us down. And when you look at the spiritual teachings, we are trying to detach from everything to move up. But you look at like the ego, it's attached to things that keep us earthbound. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's awesome. Yep. Now look, we're running out of time, and I've still got loads of questions. So what I'd like you to do is explain what, why, and how Heal Me, okay, your new platform, what it is, why you did it, why it's important, and how is the best way to navigate with that platform. And if you're open to do another one of these chats, I've got a lot more questions for you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure. Well, this is a quick answer, so you can ask some more questions if you want. So it was called Heal Me. It's now come under a larger banner called the Living Free Movement. What it is Dave Armstrong, who used to work with Solutions Empowerment, which was the all about rights and stuff. He's contacted me, and he's going through his journey of healing from cancer. And he said, I really want to be able to put something into the world to help others along these sorts of journeys. So he started a platform called Heal Me, and we just partnered in it. I bring information and an audience, and he brings the back end and information as well, and resources he paid a lot of money for. And as we were doing it, we realized a lot of people had more questions generally about their rights than about health because of what's going on in the world. So we wanted to cater to that too. So then we thought, well, we've got to have separate platforms, because otherwise not everyone's getting their health questions answered and not everyone's getting their rights questions answered. So the Living Free Movement is encompassing Heal Me, which is all about health, and then Lawful Me, which is all about rights, and then Grow Me, which is all about growing food and being self-sufficient and connecting to farmers directly. And there'll be several other platforms under the Living Free Movement, which is all about, being free physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually, all that sort of stuff, and working towards that. So, and why did I do it? Well, Dave's just somebody that I like what he's about. I thought it was when you're given an invitation to something and it's kind of like, there's something about that I feel like I should follow, the synchronicities. So I just followed it, and it's turned into a really good thing. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's nothing that you probably won't get online, like my stuff. It's not like you can get all my stuff for free on YouTube and that, but it's kind of like, are you going to sit through 15 hours of stuff to discern it yourself, or do you want to join a platform and get it more focused? That's kind of like what it's about. It's not really that I think you'll get anything that you won't get for free elsewhere.
Yeah. So if somebody does want to go down that road and pay for some of the courses, where do they go? What is it? Is it Heal Me, or is it?
No, so it's under livingfreemovement.org.
Okay. And if we've got room for one more question.
Yeah.
Because I've got questions from a few friends of mine, but I'm going to leave them for a...
Well, I've actually, because I'm just getting messages come through, I've been put back half an hour. So if you want to go until 4:15, which is an extra 20 minutes, that's cool with me.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Why did you choose to focus on communication? And I love that you did that, because that's really helped me. But what's the importance of that? And can you explain why that's so important? Sorry.
Yeah, because I went through learning all about rights, and the government's a sham and everything's commercial and it's all an offer and all that. But just knowing it is one thing. Imagine that you're really, really hurting inside, or you're paralyzed. That's like a lot of people's worst fears, is that you're like totally paralyzed, can't even blink or make a sound. And people are looking at you just going, oh, I think he's a vegetable. Should we put him down? And you kind of go, no, I'm coherent. Like, I want to still be around and I love you, or I can hear you. Don't cry. I can, that kind of thing. That to me feels real painful. The inability to communicate. And what it was for me was, I knew within myself that a lot of the stuff was a scam and I didn't have to do it. And I don't have to do that. You can't make me do that. You don't have power over me. But then because of the angst, there's a block, and the block was the communication, and it would come out as anger, or it would come out as being belligerent, just saying, you can't do that, which you hear a lot of people, or you see them at rallies and they start to just get really riled up at police or whatever. And it's like, it's not necessary. And the thing that's missing is the communication. How do you communicate that? There's ways to do it. There's ways to do it that give your power away, and there's ways to do it that maintain your innate power. So communication for me became the key point between knowing yourself, like knowing that you have rights, and actually being able to make that a reality in the world, because otherwise it's all in here and it's bottled up.
Yeah, nice. So you emphasize as well knowing yourself in the communication. And in my experience, even personally, and with other people that have asked me for help, even though this is not my area of expertise at all, one thing that you helped with is, and one thing I experienced actually when I was in court was, I know who I am in that environment, but you still have to know what the rules of the courtroom, don't you? Like, that's where I come unstuck. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't stressed out. But I was, when I spoke to you after I'd been in court, I really loved what you said. And I'm back in court in April, and that's the approach I'm going to take. But I find a lot of people struggle with communication based on not knowing who they are, not knowing how to control their emotions, and also not willing to put the work in. And that goes for me as well, because I found it really painful trying to learn that aspect, even though I knew it was so important, because it was just so not what I felt like I'm here to do, even though life showed me that, you know what I mean? So have you got anything to share with that? If somebody, because I'll go through some of the questions, for example.
Yep.
I feel like a lot of these questions are coming from a disempowered place to start with. So this is one friend. I've just sold a property and wish to pay off our other apartment so it is freehold, and then diversify our remaining assets accordingly. My understanding is, even if we pay off a property and obtain the title deeds, they can still take it off you, because the title is under the strawman name and not the living name. Now, the living name cannot be had unless the birth certificate is changed to show you as the living person, and surname is taken out of capital letters.
Well, okay, there's a few things with that. First of all, even though it's an entity, so everything is owned by entities anyway, nothing's owned by people in in that world. So the bank is an entity, but so is like Tom Barnett, that's an entity. So which entity or which company owns something? You know, like if I don't know, Coles owns like certain trucks, Woolworths can't have those trucks because Coles owns them, but both are entities, then they own an asset, right? So it's the same thing. So you just have to have your entity controlling that asset, which you do once you get the title deeds. No one can take them off you without your consent or agreement because they're yours, like you own them. So there's other ways to do things as well, like depending on whether you become the trustee or the settlor on a trust for the name or whatever. There's ways you can go down that route, or unincorporating the name, for example. Then you're the executive, the executor of contracts for the name, and then you do have more control over these things. But realistically, I feel people are living in a bit of a, like you said, disempowered, fearful place where people are going to come and take stuff from them. But the reality is, who's going to come and take those deeds and for what purpose? If you own a freehold, it's pretty unlikely that's going to happen. And then there's ways to deal with that if it did come about, because it's still only an offer at that time. So it's just, that's part of knowing yourself. You know, knowing yourself means that you're in control of your destiny to a high degree, and that as far as what man can do, as far as your actual destiny, who knows? But as far as offers from corporations or from even from men, that's a whole other thing. You got a lot of control over that.
Is there any way, if you want to focus on that aspect of law, is there any way you can direct people for that?
I like In Power Movement from Cal Washington. I think he's got a lot going for him, because I really like his mindset too. And
does stuff in Canada work in Australia, Tom?
Yeah, they've got all their documents coming out for Australia as well. It's nearly ready, because Dave, who is on the Living Free movement with me, he's also on the board of In Power Movement with Cal. So he knows what's going on there. There are other places. So there's one called Commonwealth Custodians by a guy named Keith, and he goes into unincorporating the name and why. Zev Freeman, who's got Warrior at Law, he goes into like copywriting your name and getting yourself your living status of living being. A lot of people do different things, but until you know yourself, your piece of paper is not worth anything. You know, like just because you got a piece of paper that says, like, you've got to know what you are and who you are. Otherwise, the piece of paper is not going to do anything. Just unincorporating a name might get you a couple of steps up the ladder, but soon as somebody starts to question it or gives you another offer and you don't know what it is, well, you're back down to where you started. So it's it's really like anything in life. It's not a matter of relying on techniques or what somebody else can grant you. It's what you can grant for yourself. And so for me, it's not about many of these things. It's about the mindset. It's the state of being, knowing that that's yours, knowing that the title's almost irrelevant. Like, you're the occupier of that land. You're the custodian. You know, you have right of say over who comes and goes of that land. So if you've got that mindset, rather than I own this, I paid this, I'm out of debt, it's mine, I own it, and then I'm going to like buy 7 more houses. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just the mindset is different from being a custodian. And so there's fear and loss associated with certain mindsets, and empowerment and gratitude associated with other mindsets. So that's where I find the greatest value can be found.
Do you believe that the current system is a good system and it's better to learn how to navigate in the system?
I mean, it's got its positives and negatives like anything. I think it exists purely because of us. I think it wouldn't be what it is without us. I think because of the level of disempowerment that most people are beholden to, that's what creates and propagates the system. If we all knew ourselves more, the system wouldn't be what it is. It'd be something different. So I just really think it's a reflection of who we are and where we are.
So do you suggest then, by saying that rather than worrying about these things that might happen in the future, it's better for people to go inward and work on themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you find no matter what, you're regulating your own internal system. And then, so for me, when people say, how do you deal with like a parking fine or this, or I'm like, I don't care about those things. Those aren't part of my reality. So I literally don't care about them. They don't exist in my world. So I'm more about creating something completely different. So that's what I mean. Like, to the degree to which you hate or want to fight the system is the degree to which you should probably just have a look inside and figure out some things that are going on inside for you. Because I know from personal experience that once you begin to handle that, and I'm certainly not all the way through that by any means, I've begun it. And once you begin it, you start seeing more sunshine in the world around you and less like people out to get you.
Okay, another question. If we cannot get out of the strawman name, how can we still protect ourselves? Is there a specific wording we can instruct our conveyance to use when obtaining the title deeds from the bank? I was told there isn't, and we should sell that property asset before prices plummet.
Oh, there's a lot in that question, but with regards specifically to deeds, it's all a negotiation. So it's like, if I'm selling thongs, right, and I've just got these are what I sell everyone. Nick, you want some thongs? Here you go, mate. You go, have you got any other colors? No, mate. They only come in black. Do you want them or not? And you're like, yeah, I want thongs. They go, here you go. Meanwhile, out the back, I've got gold ones, red ones, tasseled ones. But it's like Zev. No, I don't want to say too much about. I'll just let you. But basically, look, there's different products that banks have. For example, there's different accounts. There's accounts that no one can touch. So like, how even with a trust that can be frozen by like the government or the tax office or whatever, there's accounts that no one can touch. There's private banks that don't even operate in the same system. There's so much out there, but it's like, unless you're resonating at a frequency that can recognize like a being that is maybe an ascended, like an angel of some kind, you're just never going to see him. Even if somebody tries to point it out to you, you're like, what? That's a hobo. Why would I talk to them? Because you don't resonate at a place that can recognize what it is. And likewise, if you're somebody that's just going after safety and security and everyone owes you something and whatever, you're not going to be offered or you'll be flat refused that there's an account, for example, that can protect a title deed or a different kind of title. What makes you think you can't create your own title? You can create your own certificate of anything and have it notarized and put it in affidavit form. If no one rebuts it, well, then that's true. That's how the laws work. So there's ways around everything. And until people get to this stage where they realize they can create their own reality and what they live in, then they're going to be bound by somebody going, no, I don't like you. You don't have the right shoes on. You're not coming into our fancy establishment. Whereas, there might be someone naked in there. It's who we are. It's always who we are.
Another one is, can we get our super out before?
Yeah. Yeah. Even just in like standard ways, there's many ways to do that. I mean, I know one, okay, so there's loopholes, which is just you would talk to an accountant about. So you want to talk to somebody in the public system about public system loopholes. I have a friend who just got a medical reason to need to take their super out to build an extension on their house. They withheld 10 or 20%, but they got like $100 and something thousand given to them to build an extension on their house for a medical reason. So you get a decent doctor that'll write you up a reason. You can use your super for that. You can start your own self-managed fund. There's many different things you can do. As far as private ways, it's a little more difficult. I'm actually not very familiar with that because I don't have super. I've never worked in that public system to have superannuation, so it's not something I've focused on. But I know that even in the public realm, you can get most of your super out, if not all of it.
And obviously you've heard people, worrying about how they're coming for people's properties. There's a question here, are our homes safe if we have no mortgages, or can government take them away from us even if we own them outright?
Well, no one can really take anything from you without your consent. That's the thing. If you own a home freehold, yes, you've got a lot more say over it than if a home is encumbered by debt. Debt is mammon, and it's also Babylon. So these are written about for a long time. The debt slavery system is exactly that. It's a slavery system. They offer you debt and you think, great, I get to buy a house and a car and a motorbike and go on holiday, but it comes at a cost. And the cost is that it's a slavery system. So I got out of debt when I was 21. I realized what credit cards were and I was like, don't want that. And I've never got a loan since then. I'm not in any debt. And it's a really big and powerful, it's just a powerful place to be in life, to not be encumbered by debt. It's very freeing. If you want to be free, don't have debt. A lot of people go, we want freedom. Meanwhile, they got $1 million mortgage. It's like, good luck having freedom with that. it's not a bad, not putting people down for having it. We just do what we do with the best of our knowledge at any particular time. But debt is slavery by definition. So an unencumbered house is much easier to hold your rights over. However, even if you have debt, you're still dealing with a negotiation by way of an offer from anybody that says we're coming to compulsorily acquire your home, for example. That's still an offer. That's still a negotiation that's open. Only you can A, incriminate yourself, or give it away is another word, and or B, be tricked or riled into becoming belligerent and therefore being essentially unable to speak for yourself. You're an idiot, you're incompetent, you're a chattel, you're a ward of the state. And then then it can be taken from you because you prove yourself incompetent to actually be the custodian of the home. So they're the only two ways that you can actually lose it, in inverted commas, or have it taken from you, is that you prove yourself to be incompetent, or you just agree and give your consent to it, even if, yeah.
Is it true that when people get in a mortgage, you feel like you have to pay back the bank, but the bank is essentially taking your money and giving it back to you? Is that right?
Yeah, and then they charge you interest on it. Yeah. If not, people might wonder how it's your money. I don't know how much you cover with your audience on the monetary system, but essentially, when you're born, your straw man does have credits in Treasury. Whenever you sign for anything, a signature is what creates the credits for the so-called debt. It's not really a debt, it's a liability for a debt because there's no money. We only have currency and legal tender. So if you sign for a credit card for $5,000 or a mortgage for $150,000, there's no money, but your signature creates that. The signature goes through a process called securitization. Securitization is essentially you're matching up a signature, which unlocks the credits in Treasury and matches it to a dollar amount that's being put onto whatever form. So that's where the money comes from. It comes from your credits in Treasury, not the bank. So the bank, like you said, Nick, takes your credits in Treasury and gives it to you, but then they make you give it all back to them plus interest. So they get paid in triplicate each time somebody signs a signature for a bank.
So how can we access our Treasury?
Well, we can do that through what it's mostly for. There are people who claim that they access it as in just draw out funds and use them. I don't know anyone personally that's done that. I believe it is possible. But what it's mostly set up for is when governments were set up, they were forsworn to protect their people. And that means there needs to be remedy if there is no remedy in front of you. So what that means is if you're presented with, remember, there's no debt because there's no money, there's no gold and silver coin, there are only liabilities. So we can discharge a liability. And one of the ways we can do that is to access our credits in Treasury. The three most common ways are doing an acceptance for value, using a promissory note, or a bill of exchange. A promissory note, by the way, is like if you take a bank note, like a $50 note, if you go to the Bills of Exchange Act, it says that a note is a promissory note. So a $50 note, that's a promissory note. It's a debt instrument. It's a promise to pay. So you don't have to use fiat currency to do that. You can create your own promissory note and use that to discharge the liability for the debt. So that's how you access your credits in Treasury. What could that be used for? It could be for an insurance claim. It could be to discharge like a $10,000 COVID fine or a parking fine or a gas bill or something like that. Something that, there needs to be.
Why is it only used for those things? Could you not use that person, man to man?
No, because we don't have the ability to securitize. So if you sign an invoice or a bill for me, I can't do anything with that. You generally need to have a company structure, a chief financial officer, and maybe a legal department. And then anyone with that kind of capacity also has the capacity to securitize a signature. Securitizing essentially means you take the signatures and you sell them to hedge fund managers on the stock exchange. If you can do that, then yes, you can. Or if I could do that and I gave you a service or a product, then yes, you could write your own financial instrument and I'll cash that in, so to speak. But if I don't have the ability to do that, then we can't, because we can't securitize, well, then we can't do it man to man. It's more just dealing with the public in its larger capacities.
Have you ever used promissory notes for anything?
Yeah. I've discharged utilities bills. I haven't had any big bills or liabilities for like 20 years. So if I did ever have an insurance claim of some kind or whatever, I would discharge it with my own financial instrument. But I did it with gas just to prove that I could, and more effort than it's worth, in my opinion. But
okay, that was my next question. Is it a hard process or a long process?
it's not hard at all. What happens, Nick, is that as more people become aware of a process, more people do it, and then they start to try to like cut that off at the knees, because initially people were just writing, like sending in, their securitized thing with a stamp on it, their signature, their social security number, and then bang, away went the debt. But as more people did it, they're like, we can't, it is like, eventually everyone's just going to be handing us their own checks, we don't want that. Not because they're not getting paid, but because this system is about control, and they don't want people learning about that sort of stuff. So nowadays, in a lot of cases, what they'll do is they'll reject it, but that doesn't mean anything. That means you have to hold your position. Holding position means several notices and then maybe holding them accountable. For me, I'd rather pay $120 for a bottle of gas than to go through that process, but that's only because I'm more privileged now that I can afford that. Whereas there was a time when I couldn't afford that, and I may well have wanted to spend the time in discharging the liability.
Just a quick one. What do you think of the crypto space?
I'm not educated on that at all. Like my understanding is that it's pretty much a Ponzi scheme, but I do know a lot of people that do really well out of it, and very smart people as well. Sometimes I wonder if the prospect of the monetary gain is blinding them to a Ponzi scheme, or they don't care because they know how to work within it and around it. But I can't see it being any different from anything else. For example, I can't understand why a coin based on a new startup or some technological thing is worth X amount of dollars, because what are you going to do that? Well, you're going to buy stuff with it. And where does that come from? Well, it usually comes from somebody's individual labor or minerals or something from the earth. So it's just, to me, it's another way of just creating arbitrary value over something and not trading real value. It's going, I'm worth $20 trillion in crypto because I came up with a way to link 3 porn sites. It's like, is that really offering value? Like, maybe it is. And so people will create the value. So it's more complex than, I'm just trying to like simplify it in my own way. But to me, I'm not into it. However, I'd love to be able to make some money at it, because I know people that put in 10 grand and now they've got 100 and something $1,000 that they could turn into fiat currency and buy some property. And I'm like, and here's, I guess, the crux of it, Nick, is that I know that I could do more good in the world if I had more money to do it with, because I know there's certain things that I could give to people or to help people with if I had more of an ability to not have to spend so much time just trying to like make my bed, so to speak. And like, I've been homeless for like months now, so it's like, if I had money, I'd buy a property. I'd have stuff just making life a little easier in the day-to-day, so I could dedicate more of myself to, like, I don't feel I provide value for people doing my chores or trying to figure out where I'm going to live next week. I feel I provide more value for people by helping them with matters, or, in whatever way I can provide value, which would be done more easily if I had a property that I owned, so I'm not against it. It's just, if I answer the question, what do I think crypto is? I think it's a Ponzi scheme. I think it's no different to a fiat currency system. It just looks different, but it operates in fundamentally the same way when you're just talking about value and where you extract the end phase from, which is always from somebody's labor, usually slave labor, or minerals from the earth. So I don't see how it's any different in that respect. I do understand from crypto guys, it's way different from fiat, but I'm just talking the end result. So I'm not against it. I just don't have enough knowledge on it to speak into it any more than that.
Okay, last couple of questions. So when I saw you last time, you said you think it's a good idea to pay the tax department every year X amount of money. Can you just explain what a tax return is? You said that it's voluntary, a tax return. And how do you think is a good way to navigate with the tax department?
Tax is a voluntary compliance system in our country. The way it was set up was that income tax was set up to fund one of the wars, and then it was supposed to be abolished immediately after the wars, but they're like, well, we'll just keep going, which they always intended to do. That's like, they set up a COVID scam so they can start implementing, digital whatever, and now they'll keep running with it. It is a voluntary client compliance system still. That's in their own charter. They explicitly state that. Why is it a good idea to pay it? Well, there's a few reasons. One, money to me is arbitrary in value and amount. I feel it's a trap of the mind and the ego to think, I earned this, I'm worth like $10,000 an hour, I earn it, no one else should get it. And I'm like, are you really worth that? Did you really earn that? Or is it an arbitrary amount of money? And it's the buffet mentality, where if we go to a buffet, most people end up getting a bit sick, because it's like we have a greedy nature as human beings. We will take more than we need, or what's really ours, what's really valued, or what's really earned. Money's arbitrary to me, and it's a currency. It's supposed to flow. So I feel it's a trap. I feel the trap is when we go, screw the system, they're not getting any of my hard-earned cash. It's like, well, they created the system and the cash, they own it. What you create, you own. That's a maximum of law. So it's not yours in the first place, really. You have beneficial use of it, right? So then I feel it's a trap. I feel that if we're like, no, I'm holding on to it, tax office didn't get any of my money. It's like, it's not really your money. So I feel it's a trap. It's like you're being bound by the money. And we're all like that. I've been through it a lot. I think I'm still like it, where I might earn. Yeah, I think, if I earn $500 a week, and I'll be like, that's enough for me to live on. But as soon as I start earning $5,000, which I don't, but if I did $5,000 a week, I wouldn't be like, well, 500 is all I need. The tax office can take half. I don't care. I don't need any more than that. And then I can give the rest to other people who need it. I wouldn't be like that. I'd be like, no, I earned that $5,000. I'm keeping it. I'll decide where it goes. That's what my mind's going to do. So I get why other people do it, but then I'm bound by it. So I know it's a trap. So I've got enough self-awareness to just go, hang on, let's separate a bit from that. So that's the premise of what is it and why. So to answer the second part of your question, Nick, the way I see the system, as we call it, I see it's completely paralleled by the natural ways of things. You could call it natural law, you could call it nature's ways, or what have you. And if we weren't born into like this world of Babylon, we're born into the world of the jungle, which is the natural world. There's still laws that go with that. If you're not a lion or the alpha lion or the king silverback, you don't just get to do whatever you want whenever you want, And so if there wasn't this system with politicians and courts and judges and police and all that, you would have pirates and you'd have gangs of the toughest guys in the town hanging out on the street corner. And you can bet that if you're carrying cash, or if there's no cash, you're carrying shells, or you're carrying coins, or you're carrying chocolates or bananas, you're not going to get through those guys without paying the piper, so to speak. So for me, this system is actually a very friendly version of what the natural world would offer you. The natural world would offer you brutality. You would be scared for your life to go down the street a lot of the time. And the reason I say that is because, of course, we can live in a world where we're harmonious and we have each other's best interest and we live under like an Ubuntu principle. But the reason I know that we don't, or we wouldn't, is because the system, as I see it, is simply a reflection of who we are operating as a collective. So if you see the unfairness in that system, if we don't change anything within ourselves and we just go, bring down the system, put up this other one or whatever, you're going to find the same problems in that. And if that was abolished and it did just go to the natural way of things, the toughest guys on the street would be doing things to you that you wouldn't like. And you would beg for there to be police and a court system and taxes, because to me, it's the same thing. You would pay taxes regardless. It'd be called protection money in that world rather than tax.
So if I was to say, I think it's fair to pay the tax department $500 a year. You're saying that if I was to just send the tax department their $500, what would that look like? Would that be a red flag for them? Would they jump on me at that point, or would they say what's going on?
Oh, so okay, just to avoid confusion, I was saying if I earned $500 a week, the analogy or the kind of what I gave you was, I said that for a lot of people, instead of paying no tax, which you're under no obligation to do, sometimes it's better to just give the tax office some money so they just leave you alone. They never come after you. It's like protection money almost, where you might pay $500 a year just as an offering. Hey, Mr. Taxman, in good faith, I'd like to offer you $500. I appreciate what you do for the country and keeping me safe. That's a lie or it's code, but yeah.
What would that look like, Tom? Like on their end, would they say, hang on a minute, he hasn't gone through an accountant. We want to know what he's in, and how would that look?
Yeah, well, you don't have to go through an accountant to do your own tax returns anyway, but it's different for different people. If you work for somebody, so you get a PAYG or a PAYE, it's a lot harder. You already have tax taken out. You can claim most of that back by putting your expenses up to the amount so that you get it down to $18,000, $100, whatever it is per annum. If you're a sole trader, it's very easy. If you're a company, not so easy. The company will likely pay tax, but as an individual earner, you don't have to pay tax. There's different levels to things. So sole trader, or just being a man in the world, earning his way, is different. So there's elements to this too, such as the wording. If you earn an income, well, then you'd be liable for income tax. But if you receive the productivity of your labor or your sweat equity, well, you have the right to keep all of that, because only income is taxable, and that's a statutory term. So that's just an example of how even just the wording can change things. But as a guy who just provides value to the world and receives value back, well, that's mine. So there's no reason to disclose any of that even, but I would never make it look like you earn nothing, because sometimes you've just got to play the game a little. So you can make it look like you earn $20,000 a year. I mean, even if you disclose that you turned over $250,000 a year, if you had $228,000 of, or whatever that works out as, $32,000 of expenses, well, now you don't have to pay tax. And there's a lot in the tax thing, but I guess the short answer is that it's up to you. It's an offer, and it's up to you how you put in your earnings, or if you put in earnings at all. That's optional too. You can always just write to the tax office. Being open in communication, as we spoke about earlier, is very beneficial in this world. So I'm actually about to do, it's a good topic, I'm about to do it myself. I haven't done a tax return for over 10 years. So just something in my field is like, just give me a little tap saying, the tax office might actually contact you sometime soon. So to be ahead of the curve, I'm going to write to the tax office and I'm going to say, hello, Tom here. I don't believe we've had any contact for several years. Been a very long several years for me, been very sick, haven't really been on my feet or anything. But I just wanted to touch base with you, let you know that as far as I'm aware, I haven't had any income. Also just wanting to find out exactly where I stand. It's my understanding that I didn't have to put in any future tax returns. Are you able to confirm that for me? Just in writing. I'd like to know that I'm in good stead with you guys. And I mean, I'm not wording it exactly. I'm giving you the feel of what it's going to be, and send that to them, because then they'll respond with something as in, oh yeah, actually you're not obliged to hand in a tax return. Or they'll say, yeah, we were meaning to chase you up. You owe us tax returns, to which I will what? Send them a tax return? No. I'll say, oh, do I? Okay, sure. If I'm bound to do that by some law, of course, more than happy to. Just show me where I'm contracted to do that with you. Show me where I'm bound by law to do that. Let me know that tax is not a voluntary compliance system. And then if it does turn out that I absolutely have to, of course I'll honor that. Of course I will. So that's your conditional acceptance. Keeps you in honor. And what's going to happen though, is they can't
Would you
say that I do have to do those things.
Tom? Let's say they say, actually, Tom, you don't owe any money. Would you give them money at that point or no?
Well, so now you have a tacit agreement. An implied agreement is that you don't have to, but that's only implied and it could change at any time. Once you have it in writing, then it's your choice. And you know what I might actually do? Might actually send them $5. Even if they say you don't have to, I'll just go, you know what, I appreciate that. But in good faith, I want to offer you guys a little bit of me, so I can do my bit to keep the whole country going, because I value being part of a whole community. Something like that, or $100, something like that, because I do feel that there is value in doing that. Because A, it's not my money. B, if I happen to have a good year, I didn't necessarily put in more work than I did last year. It's not necessarily an indication of that. And in my experience, the people who make the most money give the least amount of value and probably don't do any real work. The people who give the most don't earn much money. So I don't feel that just because you have more money, it's yours and you keep it. It's just that's a philosophy. It's not anything else anyone has to buy into as well. That's just how but it makes me less bound by the money. So what I'll say is, Nick, that's not the truth. That's just a way that I relate to money and the system around me in a way that makes me calm. Anyone else can feel completely different about money and tax and value. That's totally fine.
And last question, that's a good question to ask you, because you're obviously detached from what happens. But in your last few years, are you seeing a change in people for the better or the worse? Where do you think we're going as a species? And what is your final message for anyone?
Well, I think it's it's hard to say, because based on recent events, so let's just go for the last 2 years, based on COVID, more and more people waking up to the fact that there's more to life than what they used to think there was. Less and less faith in the system. So the system as a whole is somewhat crumbling, because there's not as much need. People are taking more responsibility for themselves and their own way through life, which is good. Take the floods that we've just experienced, and where I was not having a lot of real great faith in the community to be acting as a community. I always said it would take like a natural disaster, even though this one wasn't so natural, a disaster of some kind to unite people. I've seen that. I've seen how well people can function, and I think it's great. But what's to be seen is what's really, because I always look for the things that are underneath. And when I see people spring into action, sometimes I see it's out of their traumas. It's out of being a do-gooder. It's out of the ego. It's not really a pure place to be jumping into action. And second of all, how long will it take for what I call Christmas syndrome to wear off? Like, how long is it going to take until those people are not really wanting to help each other and wanting to put a barrier between them and the neighbor that they just helped get out of some trouble? So is it lasting? I don't know. I'm yet to see. I don't know where we're going, but I feel that the realm itself goes through its ages and its stages, and we can't stop that. That's like, some people refer to that as the sky clock, for example. There's like a way of things. Yep. And if we don't keep up with it or match the speeding up or the change in frequency or the whatever, yep, their life appears to be a lot harder. It'll feel like sludgy for you. And those that are able to match that is going to feel like there's actually more ease. So honestly, I feel it's a matter of perception. I don't think that there's really an answer to it. I think for those that are bogged down in that, I think it's going to go that way. And I think for those that are willing to embrace the earth, the realm itself, yep, and to get into themselves, I think that they're going to experience that. So some people are going to experience the great awakening of humanity and go with that. And other people in the exact same place and space and time are going to experience something different. I think it's a personal thing.
Do you think it's worth finding out what's happening astrologically? Because the negative forces that run the place, they definitely create events that move in harmony with the...
Exactly, yeah. I've had a realization recently, which I haven't fully articulated in my own mind, but I'm going to do a video about it soon. And it's about why we're here and this place in the Northern Rivers specifically. And the astrology plays into that a lot. And I think some people miss the point of astrology because they don't realize the inversion and the power that the dark side have with it. I don't claim I know a lot about astrology. It's just that when I see somebody talk about astrology in a certain way, in the love and light way, I'm just like, I think you're missing a big part of what this realm's actually, how that relates to things. I'm just trying to articulate it before I spit it out. I don't want to ruin it.
No, and any final messages, like if you were to give, anyone watching this from all walks of life, what's your final message?
Yeah, sure. Well, for me, I was thinking about this the other, I'll just put it this way, rather than it being a message. We're talking about prayer and that with people a few times. It's come up recently. And I thought the best prayer that I could think of would just be like, dear God, be like, fucking A, amen. And that'd be it. It's saying thanks, and it's saying like, how exciting is this journey? Like, I know a lot of people get down a bit about life and, things are hard. I lost my home and things got washed away in a flood, or someone broke up with me, or I lost some money or whatever. And it's like, I just think there is so much joy and excitement in this life if you're willing to look for it and embrace it, that I don't know how you could ever be bored or like, you know, those sorts of things. I just think it really is a choose your own adventure. And so the more you get to know yourself, the more you get to have control over that choose your own adventure. And you don't have to choose the lower resonant frequencies of things, because that's usually just an offer put here by the entities that have the ability to work with that sort of stuff. But we don't have to buy into it. It's really our choice. So at the end of the day, if we can just bring more fun, like that childlike excitement, like watch a puppy, it's excited about everything. You're going to pat it, or you're going to let it outside, or it's looking at a ball, or it's looking at the sky or a butterfly. Like that kind of thing is very valuable. I think we lose that a lot, A, as we age and get a little more jaded or just used to stuff, and B, just like a little bit bogged down with all the offers that we're constantly, you know, being given, but not realizing that we don't have to be bound by those. So to realize that it's a choice, to realize we can create excitement, intimacy, love, trust, value at any stage, and that power is absolutely all within us. I think that's really empowering and exciting, and that's what I would, if I could offer like a way to look at things, it'd be that.
It's funny you said that, because I remember, I think it was Alan Watts. He said how hard of a job God has got because of how miserable people's prayers are. And so yeah, there's not many people who just have fun in their prayers. That's good. So, but as you said, embracing life is one of the greatest respects we can pay to the Creator.
Yeah.
And as well, touching on the floods you were talking about, as much as people were losing everything, when you were seeing what they were losing, I couldn't help but feel it was a massive cleanse and detachment from all the shit that people gather. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, mate, I really enjoyed this, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everything you do in the community and online and what have you. And yeah, appreciate your time.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it too.
Good, mate. And see you around, yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
I'll stop the recording now. Take it easy.